Alrighty, and we're on. Ben Hedges, how are you?
I'm good, man. Pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you for coming on. So I guess Ben is well, his main thing is YouTube at the present moment, and people might know him as the Credit Shifu.
That's right.
And Ben is actually another one of my wife's friends. They met in Taiwan, I think back in around 2008. And I guess I'll ask you questions about that story and what you thought of her and some of the interactions from that as well to get some of your insights. But you're based in America, right? In New York State?
Yes, about an hour and a half north of New York City now.
Yep.
Yeah, used to be in the city, but most people, once they have kids, they move out of the city. So
sure,
that's kind of what we did.
Yeah. Okay. And you grew up in whereabouts did you grow up? Because I got confused whether it's did you grow up in Hong Kong or did you grow up in Britain first? Which was first?
So I was born in Hong Kong and I was there until I was 9. And then I went to the UK and I was in the UK until I was about, I guess 22. And that's when I went to Taiwan. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's start with Hong Kong then. So
yeah, sure.
Your parents were obviously working in Hong Kong for like expats, or what were they?
Yeah, right. So at that time there was like some special deal for my dad, who was an engineer designing buildings, and you could go to Hong Kong and they would give you they were looking for people to go to Hong Kong basically and work for the government to build like housing and stuff like that. So he went there. He was there for 13 years, and then I was born a few years afterwards, and then they left. Well, we all left because of the Hong Kong handover, because they wanted to, they weren't going to give them such a good deal. So he was like, oh, it's time to go back to the UK. Yeah.
Okay. And so growing up, in Hong Kong, what would be, I guess, your earliest memories? What do you remember about that from a childhood perspective?
Oh man, I mean, Hong Kong was awesome. I really liked it as a kid. I mean, like the weather is just is decent. It's like it's warm, like
temperate. Yeah,
it's temperate. The winter's like not too cold. It goes down to like 15 degrees. Although when you live there, you think it's cold, right? You're like, oh my god, it's 15 degrees. I better take out a jacket or whatever. But it's nice. And I just remember, we lived up on the mountain, well, sort of like, like above the city. So I guess when you're an expat there, you can live quite a good life. I've since been back there and observed the way people with less money live, because I've been back there like on a budget and staying in, the type of place you can rent, like an Airbnb or whatever, some pretty crappy places where the bathroom's like this small and the toilet's like, the toilet's like in the shower. You're having a shower and the water's splashing onto the toilet, so I saw a different side of it, but at that time it was all like luxury stuff and pretty cool. So it was a pretty good life in Hong Kong. We were actually there when the Tiananmen Square massacre happened in China. That was actually left a deep impression on me, because we went and put some flowers. Everyone there was obviously like glued to that because it was happening like on their doorstep, and we went and put some flowers down at this memorial they had for it. And as a kid, I didn't really know what was going on really, but my parents were like, oh, they sent in tanks and they killed all these people, and it's like, wow, okay, crazy, But that's actually, strangely, that's one of my quite early memories from Hong Kong. It's that whole time, probably just because it was so everyone was so serious about it. It left a deep impression.
And I guess so, from being there till you were 9, you would have gone to school there, right? So
unfortunately I went to a school that didn't teach Cantonese, which is really a shame. I really wish. It was like an international school. A lot of the kids were like, I guess Chinese kids made up about 20% of the kids there, and there's a lot of Indian kids, Australian, American, like just different nationalities. So they didn't teach Cantonese, which I think was crazy, because it would you had such a good opportunity to learn it, but unfortunately not. Well, nowadays I think Mandarin is becoming obviously more prevalent, post handover, and obviously the influx of mainland Chinese into Hong Kong as well, right? So you've got that base covered too. Cantonese is like the cool Chinese. I really wish I could have, like, I've learned a bit afterwards, at university. I did the Cantonese 101 class and stuff, but I really wish I could have learned it properly and been able to speak it, because
back then was the golden age of Hong Kong cinema. Like all the cool movies were in Cantonese, and the Mandarin versions were the dubbed versions, and you sort of they weren't as good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I guess going to an international school in Hong Kong, I guess, first of all, how would you describe yourself as a student? And then the second thing, I guess, is what was that experience like for you? Like, did you really enjoy it? Did you not like it? I guess, and when I say that, I'm talking about comparatively, because obviously then you went back to Britain, right? Or the UK.
Yeah, I would say, it was a lot more friendly atmosphere in Hong Kong, because like all the kids were from all different places, so there was no one like dominant. Even though it was a British place, British people were actually a minority in Hong Kong. Like, it was like, I think there were even more Americans in Hong Kong than there were British at that time, even though the British were running it, right? So like the international school was like kids from all over the place, and it was a nice environment. Actually, people liked it, and we celebrate all the different festivals of the different kids who were in the class and stuff. And it's kind of a contrast to Britain, because when I went to Britain, it's kind of a more depressing atmosphere there. People aren't as friendly, and you'd also see like some. I didn't really understand it when I first got there, but there's like some racism between like different groups in the class. Like, I remember first when I went there, someone's being racist against like a Pakistani kid in the class, and I was like, I really didn't understand why, and like, I guess after you've been there a while, you start to understand why certain tensions have built up, but like, I guess still doesn't make it good. But when I first got there, I really was like, wow, why are they so like nasty to these other groups of kids, stuff like that, so and then just the whole atmosphere in UK is nowhere near as friendly as Hong Kong, so that was my impression. I remember when I first got there into elementary school in the UK, there was some kid who came up to me and he said, like, because I had the sweater but it didn't have the school's logo on it because we couldn't get the patch to sew on or something in time, and he come up to me and said he saw that. He's like, oh, you knew? I was like, yeah, man, yeah. And he goes, oh, okay, and then he just walks off. Like, I thought he was gonna be like, oh, I'll introduce you to my friends, or something,
be a friend or something, take you around, and you got nothing.
I was like, oh, you knew? Yeah, okay, bye. So
when your parents broached it with you that, hey, we're going back to Britain, what were your emotions attached to that? Because had you grown attached to Hong Kong, or?
No, as a kid, I was excited. I thought it was like, wow, it's like the motherland. It probably is like better, like, and I'd been there in the summer on vacations, and like every day you do some cool stuff, right? Because it's a vacation. It's like you're going to like amusement parks and things like. So I thought it was like constant, like, amusement parks and cool
party,
stuff.
right?
Yeah. But when I got back for the first year, I was really depressed. But it was the second year we moved to this other place further outside of London, and the kids there are a lot more friendly. It's more like a countryside town. And they kind of treated me as if I was like this like treasure, like, oh, this guy's come from a faraway land from Hong Kong, and they were actually much more friendly, So it could just be like big city kids in the UK and not friendly at all.
No, that could be a possibility too, right? So from an accent perspective, did you have a slightly different accent to your English, having grown up in Hong Kong, or?
No, I don't think so. I think I was pretty standard in the British accent back then, even when I lived in Hong Kong. But it's more like after I've left, like I go back to UK now, and people think I'm Australian because because I live in the US, but I don't really sound like someone from the US. But I also stopped sounding like somebody from the UK. But I went to this barber once to have a look in the UK. It's like this really posh barber, and I just went in there to ask some questions, be like, oh, maybe I'll get a haircut here. And the guy was telling me like, our chief stylist, he's from Australia, and he really emphasized the Australia thing, right? And that came out. Did he actually think I was Australian? It's happened several times,
I get the inverse. Like when I talk to people on the phone, and then they go, oh yeah, Johnny, okay, yeah, no worries. And then they'll come in to buy this car or whatever, and they go, I'm here for Johnny, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, you're not Johnny. I'm like, yeah, mate, that's me.
What were they thinking? It was a British guy, or is it?
No, they're just thinking it was like an Aussie bloke, right? Like, because
how I think. A white guy,
they just think, And then, so I had a customer say that to me once, and I was like, I'm not really offended. Like, I'm sort of okay with it, but at the same time, it's like, that's borderline.
People say a lot of different things like that are mild, that are borderline offensive just because of kind of like ignorance, like in Taiwan when I had it there, I you experience it, because you're a foreigner there, and they'll blurt stuff out that's like borderline offensive, but you know they're really not trying to be offensive. They just like don't really realize, like they'll be like, oh, can you if you close one eye, can you see your own nose, you know, because like our Western people's noses are like big. Or they also have this term adora, which means like an eagle nose, and they call foreigners that, you know.
Foreigners,
Sometimes someone in the store will just shout it out. It'd be like, a customer will shout out to the store owner, adora, like an adora has come, you know. And you're like, it means the guy with the eagle nose has come. I don't know whether I should be offended by that. I don't know. I'm still haven't made up my mind.
but I think Mandarin Chinese, or Chinese in general, is a very direct language, right? Like when you know, I guess when we say like a black person, we literally say black person. It's hey ren, you know. You know, and then it's like a white ren is you know, an overseas person, right? But, you know, it's like it's very literally translated, and I don't think it's necessarily meant to be offensive. But when you think about it, you go, oh, that's pretty, could be borderline offensive.
Yeah, it's funny.
So okay, so tell me more about that experience for you. You know, you moved to this country town. You feel like you've obviously gotten a little bit more accepted. What were you like in school? Like, were you academic? Were you sporting? What sort of character were you?
I was not that academic. I guess I was probably more artistic in school, you know. Sports, I did quite well in the sort of like long distance running and things like that. But I was never really, you know, in the main sports that people do. You know, I did rugby actually at the beginning, but then when I got to about 14, everyone started growing a lot bigger, and I didn't really keep up with them, you know. So it become a bit dangerous, you know. You don't want to get, I'm like 140 pounds. You don't want to get stuck under someone who's like 200 pounds. You know? So I was like, quit. It was too dangerous, or too painful. But yeah, I did well. And then later on I did well in like rock climbing and things like that. Like extreme sports really was my, what I was into. But you know, academically, I was like very average in school. You know, I came out with deep, you know, kind of okay grades, but nothing amazing.
And then from a subject perspective, did you have a favorite subject? Like what was it that sort of interested you?
I guess probably my favorite was music at the time. Because I played the guitar and stuff like every young teenage boy, right? Or almost, you know. But yeah, probably music. Strangely, I did well in science. I actually left with an A in science, which is kind of weird. Maybe even an A star. I don't know. Maybe it was an A. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of weird considering I'm not really like someone who does like calculations and things like that, right? But yeah, it was actually after I left school, then I started. I didn't go to university straight away. I started doing rock climbing instruction. It was actually quite a good job. You know, you could get, if you did a qualification, you could get quite a high rate of pay. One of them was giving me like 18 pounds an hour at like 18, you know, which is pretty good. You know, it's like at the time it was like $30 or something like that, you know, an hour. So anyway, I did that for 2 years. And then I actually learned Chinese with a private tutor at the time. And I got quite good at it, and I was like, you know what, I didn't go to university because I couldn't think of what to do, right? So at that time I was like, you know, I could actually, you know, go to university and do this, you know. So I applied like 3 years late after most people already applied, you know, already started, and I got into one of the top universities in the UK, which is School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. And so I started there when I was like 22.
So a couple of things there that I want to sort of you know, unpack with you. So the rock climbing, how did you actually get into rock climbing in the first place? Was it that you went? Oh yeah,
that's a cool story actually, because when I was growing up, my mom enrolled me in this club. It's called like the Adventurers Club, right? And it was kind of an outdoor club for kids. And it's strange because the original guy who ran it actually turned out to be like kind of like a pedophile. Although I never encountered anything crazy with it. And we were only with him for like a couple of years. It wasn't like a super crazy, but he did some inappropriate things, right? And he ended up getting prosecuted for it. But a guy who had worked under him, who actually had reported him to the police and, you know, served as a witness in his trial. So we were sure this guy was like clean because he was the person
he
who like,
helped to prosecute the other
spearheaded
guy.
the thing, right? He took it over. We kind of, my mom and a few other parents kind of kept nagging him like, oh, could you take this club over? They were so good for the kids, like their development and stuff. So anyway, I became like a key person, you know, one of the most, how should you say, you know, who came to the most sessions and trips and stuff. And so this guy, Paul, he took us on all these trips throughout Europe, climbing mountains and stuff, and glacier treks and some pretty hardcore stuff. And then out of that, I started doing the qualifications to do it myself, you know, be an instructor for mountain leader and rock climbing and things like that. So yeah, that's how I did it. And then after high school, it was just like, oh, I could, you know, I should get a job, I guess. So I just like, oh man, this is what I'm, you know, doing qualifications in. So I might as well do this.
Yeah. And okay, so just, you know, in terms of that, so it's obviously outdoor rock climbing that you were doing, right? So,
yeah.
Yep. And you mentioned you went to some pretty extreme climbs. Like, can you talk me through, I guess, you know, one of those climbs that you felt was really impactful to you? Yep.
Yeah. So let's think. So when I was, I guess 18, was it 18? Yeah, probably 18. We did this climb of 3,900 meter peak in the Alps, which is, you know, you have to have crampons, ice axes, and you go up to this hut where you stay the night, and then you get up at like 3 a.m. because you have to like, it has to be cold because you're walking across a glacier and there's like snow bridges across these crevasses. And if it's too hot, they break and you can fall down a crevasse, right? So you have to go in the morning when it's really cold, and you climb up, and we come over this mountain just as the sunrise is happening. It's very beautiful. And then, and you're roped up as well. So if you fall down a crevasse, you know, the other people got to dig their ice axe into the snow and stop you falling, and then, you know,
pull you back.
Pull you back. So it's really cool. That was like something crazy for like a 18-year-old to do, you know? And later I worked, when I was working in a climbing center, I actually had a friend who was, so this is something else a guy had done, not me, but I knew this guy who I climbed with, and he was the youngest British person to climb Mount Everest. And I used to climb with this guy, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to do this Mount Everest thing. I was like, wow, man. Yeah. He was like racing against time, and he summited, I think when he was 19, which made him, the youngest Brit at that time to climb Mount Everest, which was quite crazy. So I met quite a lot of people who'd done incredible things. And I guess if I had continued past, you know, if I hadn't gone to university, I probably would have done that full time and done some even more crazy things like that. Probably the craziest one I've done is the Breithorn Traverse in Switzerland, which is a 4,000 meter peak. And I did that a few years later, I guess, when I was 21. And that's like a full on, it's hard to describe unless I show you pictures, but that's another one where it's like you're on like a knife edge ridge, you know, and you're climbing rocks, and there's a glacier under you, and there's clouds swirling around below you. And that one I actually got a bit of altitude sickness and actually threw up on the summit. But luckily that mountain has a very easy way down. So it's like rocky on one side and it's just a snow field on the other. So we literally just slid down it on our butts. And then, and as I come down, I feel better and better as you know, lower you go. So, but yeah, it was really cool. Like those few years.
Okay. So with that climb where you had to go at 3 a.m, how do you get back then? Do you go back the same way? Because if you know, obviously by the time sunrise come out, it's starting to get warmer, right? Doesn't that make it more dangerous?
It does. But you just try to be as quick as possible. You don't go back to the start point. So like you go to this hut, you get up at, it may have even been earlier than 3, like 2 or something. You get up, you do your climb. And then, when you're coming back down, it is melting. And on the way down, a friend of mine actually fell into a crevasse. But luckily it was just, so the snow bridges, they really do start melting. And he fell into one, but luckily the middle between his legs held. So it was just like 2 footholds. His legs went in. And actually a little bit between his legs held. We pulled him out like that. So that really is. And you also have seracs, like there are these big ice falls that, you know, a big chunk of ice can fall off during the day and just come crashing down on top of you. So the guides, because you go with a guide, typically you go with a guide. Like that one we hired a guide, the other one we didn't, we just did it ourselves. But often you'll hire a guide, and they're really particular about it. They're like, we gotta, we got to move fast. We got to get out of this area under these ice falls because ice could just fall off and fall on top of us. So, yeah.
Okay. And so, and I think the other thing, we're doing climbs like that, right, is that there's probably a lot of preparation that goes into that, right?
Yeah, you've got to plan your route, because obviously you can't get lost when you're kind of racing against time. Although certain climbs, it's not that easy to get lost because you're like on a knife edge ridge or something. There's only one way to go. But yeah, and also the equipment's got to be like, everything's got to be in the place where you need it, because like the last thing you want to be doing is like rummaging around in your bag. Like as soon as the sun comes up, you need sunglasses, for example, right? Otherwise your eyes are going to really
get the glare
by the snow, snow blindness and stuff. So you want your sunglasses prepared in your pocket here, so you can literally just reach in and grab them. Like if you have to, the sun comes up and you have to stop and you have to look through your bag to find them. Like there's a lot of planning with things like that, like everything needs to be in easy place to grab when you need it. There's a lot like that. And the acclimatization as well.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, the acclimatization as well. You want to do, typically you'll do like a smaller peak first, and then you'll go back down and you'll sleep at the altitude. You can't sleep at an altitude too much higher than the night you slept before. But during the day, you could go up. Maybe you can go up 1,000 meters, but you want to come back down to maybe only 300 meters higher than you slept the previous night, ideally. And then the next day, maybe you go for the bigger peak, and then you come back down. So you acclimatize.
Okay. And so when you're going through this process of learning these climbs, was it just the guide that taught you, or did you have somebody that took you under their wing and said, okay, Ben, if you're going to do this crazy shit, this is the stuff that you need to be aware of, and let's look at how we plan this and pack this and organize these things?
So like for the alpine stuff, I guess it was the guide, and I read a lot of books and stuff like that. For the just sort of regular lower level mountaineering in Europe, that's in the UK, that's like they still have some pretty cool mountains, but they're not like, there's no glaciers and stuff. There's a lot of rock and stuff like that. But that one I actually did qualifications for, which would be kind of like the basics that you could then take on and go and do alpine mountaineering in Switzerland and stuff. So I did some qualifications, and then the extra stuff I learned just through doing it, really.
And I guess, when you're doing those climbs, was there any moment that you felt any sort of immediate danger?
A few times, although more on the ones that I did in the UK. Because the ones we did in Switzerland and France and stuff, those were like very well planned out and stuff, because that was like, you'd go on a trip. It would be like a once a year thing that you could do, so it would be like very, we weren't taking any chances doing routes that were beyond our
capability,
because you're already in a crazy place. But in the UK, it was like where I could push myself more. So I did push myself quite hard on some rock climbs and pretty extreme kind of things. So I remember one where, I climbed up this very sheer face that has very few holds on it, and there's only one little hole where you can put in some protection to protect yourself if you fall off. And I climbed to the top, and then the guy who came up after me, he said, I touched that little bit of protection that you put in, and it just fell out. So basically, like if I'd fallen, it would have been all the way to the bottom, so there's some sketchy stuff like that. But then as I got older, I kind of shied away from doing too extreme kind of stuff, because if you're going to have kids and a family, you can't go and die doing something like that. So,
it's one of those, I think it's one of those sports where you really need to hold your composure first of all, and then obviously have that awareness of where are the safest places to try and do some of those things. But sometimes they may not, just like that little foothold or whatever, that little anchor point wasn't really there for you, but thankfully you didn't know until after.
I mean, I had a suspicion, but it's weird. It's like when you're doing that, you're in a place, it's hard to know until you do it, because sometimes people will be like, oh, you would be scared, wouldn't you be up there like shaking?
But you've got to focus. You're not thinking about that, right?
No, it's different, because so people see like, how do these guys do these solo climbs where they climb these ridiculous things, and you're like, you don't really understand it unless you do it. You do it. Understand the place the guy's mind's in. Like, you can't really be scared, because it's like, well, if I collapse, I'm dead. So I've got to like actually focus, but you can do it safely. Like you could do pre-bolted routes that just, are very safe. And you can still have a great time doing it. So you can still do it. You can still have a lot of fun, but you just can't like, push the envelope that much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the excitement of it, right? Like when you do challenging things, I think, you know, that's when you can achieve the most, because you don't have there's no buffer, right? Like you know that you need to do this, and that's what you're focused on, and then that's where you actually get excellent results. Is that you've got to raise a focus on achieving this one goal, and that's all you're not thinking about failure, because failure is probably death, right? You're thinking about, how do I now achieve this? And so all of your energy is actually put into that, almost like that, into that fight or flight mechanism. It's all in the fight to try and, you know, summit this peak or climb, you know, this route. So I guess the second part of what I wanted to unpack there with you is that you mentioned that, so after the climbing, you got yourself a Chinese language tutor. So
yeah,
what was the I guess the catalyst for that?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously I'd lived in Hong Kong. I did a lot of Kung Fu during my teenage years.
Okay, what Shaolin Kung Fu?
Yeah, like Tiger and Crane Kung Fu.
Okay. Yep.
Which was pretty cool. You know, I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yep.
And then in my I guess when I was about 18, I encountered this practice Falun Gong, which is like a meditation practice, right? And I guess it's famous.
Banned in China.
It's banned in China, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, severely persecuted in China, which is crazy because it's, you know, maybe you wouldn't like it, but there's no reason to like put people in prison and do things like that. But I found that really good. Like I started doing the meditation of that, and it has actually helped me clean up my life a little bit, because, you know, through being a teenager, going to a lot of parties and stuff, I actually started like smoking and drinking quite a bit and stuff. And after I practiced that, I was like, wow, I feel so like purified doing these exercises. I feel like I have the strength to just quit. And in just one day, I just stopped. Like cause I smoked about, you know, maybe 10 cigarettes a day. And every weekend I was like going to parties and getting really drunk. So, but yeah, just one day I just like, gone, just done. No more. So that was really cool, like that. But through that, more so than the Kung Fu, I actually met a lot of people who spoke Chinese. Because the Kung Fu was actually taught by a Westerner. Like his master was in Singapore, but he was the guy who ran the school in the UK was a Westerner, and they didn't really speak Chinese. But the people who did.
What was his name, out of curiosity?
Oh, that guy's called Ian Armstrong. You can search him online. His school is called Nam Yang, Namyang. And he teaches in like the Greater London area. But yeah, so they were like English speaking, but the people who did Falun Gong was like mostly Chinese people who had come out of China because they wanted to escape being, you know, mistreated by communists in China. And I met a lot of people who spoke Chinese, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool. And I was like, I'd like to try learning some of this so I can like have a go at speaking to these people, because not all of them spoke English. And it was kind of then that I discovered, oh, I'm actually doing quite well learning this. I could probably do this in university.
Okay, so normally, you know, when you see people practicing Falun Gong, they're in a park, generally somewhere public, and they'll have signs up that say Falun Gong. Did you just happen by that, and then you thought, oh, I'm going to try this, or how did you get introduced to it?
It was actually a friend who did the Kung Fu with Ian Armstrong, who he introduced it to me. He was like, oh yeah, I was searching for, you know, I wanted something a bit more spiritual than the Kung Fu, so I was searching for stuff, and I found this online. And he told me all about it. I was like, oh yeah, this sounds cool, man. Like, so yeah, so then I went and tried it, and I went to one of those parks, practice sites in a park, and you know, tried it out.
And I guess you know, some people might have some misconceptions over what, you know, Falun Gong or Qigong or something like, you know, or Kung Fu and these sorts of things. Like, but essentially, I would say it's like meditation through movement, right? So you know, you don't necessarily have to be seated. Like most people, when they think of meditation, they think of seated meditation, like, you know, on like that style of meditation. But part of the reason I think, anyway, you know, there are forms and movements is to coordinate your movements with breath work. And I think, you know, that in itself, you know, both trains your system to breathe, because breathing is so important, but at the same time, you're then also getting circulation, right? So would that be how you would interpret it?
Yeah, I guess so. Like Falun Gong is a little bit different in that it doesn't specifically say any breathing method, but you actually find, when you start practicing it, you find your breath sort of automatically coordinates with the movements without you really thinking about it. I mean, it's just like breathe naturally. But yeah, in the Kung Fu, I did a lot of different breathing, techniques, like the natural diaphragm breathing, reverse breathing, stuff like that. But yeah, with the Falun Gong, I mean, there's 4 standing exercises that are like meditative exercises that you do move, like Tai Chi or Qigong or whatever. And yeah, it is kind of like a meditation through movement, and it does really kind of have an effect on the body. You feel very energetic afterwards, like you're on a spring.
Refreshed.
Yeah, refreshed, and almost like something's like your spring in your step, like you're being pushed when you walk along, kind of thing. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me more about, I guess, the your Chinese language lessons, right? Like, did you just then go and decide, okay, I'm going to Google somebody and try and find a tutor, or did you have somebody introduce you to a tutor? And I guess, were you doing it in person or were you doing it online?
Yeah, no, so I did it in person. It was just someone from my old high school who was a Chinese teacher, right? Or she was a Chinese teacher before, and then she started working at my old high school. And I was actually the first person to do a Chinese exam at that school. Because this was just, this was like the early 2000s, when Chinese was kind of just starting to be taught in Western schools, right, in the UK. It's still not really taught that widely, I don't think, but they started offering it. And so I went back there as a 20-year-old and sat this exam with all these 16-year-olds, and I was the only person. They were doing like French exams and stuff like that, and I was just this one person, the first person ever at that school to do this Chinese language exam, and I got an A star, which was cool. And it's funny. It shows like actually learning something because you want to versus being forced to learn something as a kid. The difference is like so, great. A star versus just not really being able to do it.
Okay. And so then how did that then lead? So you went and studied at university, and then
so I applied to SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, which is that's a cool university. That's actually the teacher of the last emperor of China. He was one of the original lecturers at that university in 1916. So if you've seen the movie The Last Emperor, it's kind of quite a classic movie about the last emperor of China, and he had a Western teacher, a British teacher, Reginald something, I don't know, and he was one of the early lecturers at that university, and like I think 10,000 books in the library are still from his private collection and stuff. It's got a lot of history with it, and I was actually denied I applied at Leeds University as well, and they rejected my application. I was like, oh, I wonder why. Like, this is not even a particularly top tier university. But the School of Oriental and African Studies, which is the one I really wanted to go to, they actually accepted me. And it was funny because when I met the guy who was the lecturer who was doing the admissions that year, he was like super into all the classical stuff, right? And in my statement, you have to write a little personal statement thing. I talked about how I was really interested in like Confucius and had done Kung Fu and meditation and Qigong and things like that. And I was like, oh, I know why this guy accepted me, because it was like right up this guy's street, all the stuff. So even though my grades were not quite good enough from my ordinary subjects to do it. But I think it was sort of like the cultural appreciation and the fact that I was a little bit older that I got in. At that time, I think it was a number 9 university in the UK, like top 10. I think it's actually come down a little bit now, but
okay. And I guess, out of curiosity, what were your parents saying about, because obviously you go and do climbing, so you're doing this rock climbing thing, and obviously your mum was probably encouraging of that because of, she put you in that adventurous thing. But when it came to then, okay, mum, dad, I'm going to study Chinese, like, did they have any sort of input, or did they say anything to you? Did they think it was going to be a viable career choice?
No, I think they were pleased, but also at that time they knew there's nothing they can do to stop me or whatever. Okay. I was very opinionated. It's like, I'm going to do this now. But I think they were pleased because like going to universities, I don't know, our society today, most people are encouraged to go to university. It's seen as like you're successful, but actually you really don't necessarily need to, depending on what job you want to do. But just because of the whole culture and stuff, I guess they were like, oh, good, he's going to university. He's going to make it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a high school teacher named Mr. O'Brien, and he taught us in engineering, right? And he actually said to our engineering class, like, basically, all you learn in university is how to learn for yourself. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you've got a bachelor's degree, you just treat that as you are now capable of doing your own self-learning, right? So he didn't really attach any sort of, you know, great significance to it. It was just that, you know, you are now capable of learning yourself. And it was quite funny because when I finished all my studies, I was on that pathway where I was like, oh, I've just done all this study. I don't want to study ever again. And, you know, how naive, because now it's like I'm all about the self-study and the self-learning and the reading and all those sorts of things again, because, you know, it turned me off for the longest time. But then, you know, having those skills in the background, I think, you know, do help you later in life. So
yeah, it's true, because if you turn up to a company interview with a degree, it shows that you can apply yourself to something. And, you know, because the jump between high school and university is like such a big step, you know. You look at something you wrote in high school and you're like, this is like something a kid would do, like a baby, right? You know, you look at a research project from university and you're like, wow, like looking through it now, I'm like, wow, you know, and if I was to do it again, I guess I could do, but it would be like, wow, I got to get back into all this and like this really professional level of you know, research and stuff like that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny when you do. So I think you guys would call it what, like your A levels or something over there. The equivalent of your the last exams you do in high school before you go to university or college. So we call that our HSC over here. And I remember, you know, when we were studying for the HSC, you put all this pressure on yourself that it's like, oh, this is, you know, you to get you into university and get into the course that you want. And it's like you get to uni and then that whole year that you spent, you know, trying to do just sit these one set of exams, you do that every semester. So you're doing that twice a year. So it's almost like an accelerator, hit the accelerator pedal again and takes it to the next level. So
it is,
yeah.
I was kind of lucky in my first year because I already had such a good knowledge of Chinese that I was a bit ahead of the class. So for the first semester, I was able to relax. But basically during the first semester, they got to the level where I had learned in a whole year.
Previously.
And then the second semester, everything was new, and I was like, "Well, I gotta work now."
Okay. Out of curiosity, did you find anything helpful in terms of learning the Chinese language? So, you know, I'm always interested in terms of how people look at, you know, learning languages and things like that. Was there anything in particular that resonated for you, or a learning style that resonated for you?
Yeah, for Chinese, the biggest help I did was flashcards. That was the biggest thing. Well, no, two things: flashcards for study, and then talking to people who don't speak any English, or actually applying the language. Because obviously you've got to talk to people, otherwise you'll end up with like passive vocabulary where you just understand the words, but you can't really use them in a sentence, right? So I would do, and you can't do it the opposite way where you just talk to people, but you don't study with textbooks, because then you're not, you know, you might have a grasp of it, but you don't really understand deeper meanings behind those characters and stuff. So you got to do both. You've got to study with textbooks. You got to do flashcards to remember the characters and the words. And then you've got to go and talk to people who don't speak any English, who you can't just cheat and use an English word and they'll understand. You got to genuinely talk to people who have no idea what you're saying if you speak English. So you have to actually use Chinese. And those three things combined, I would say, mean you can learn very fast. And when you do flashcards, if you want to actually be able to write, you got to do flashcards where you do one version where you look at the character and you say the pinyin and then you say the English. So you've got to actually have triple-sided flashcards. And obviously that doesn't exist in real life. So you need a computer program like iFlash that you do that with. You can have triple-sided flashcards. So you see the character, you say the sound in Chinese. So you flip to the next card and it shows the pinyin. And then you flip to the next card and it will show the English, right? So you actually get to these. And then you do it the other way around, where you look at the English and you write down the character on a piece of paper. And then you flip the flashcard and you check and see if it's correct. So you do it both ways. If you want to learn to write, you don't have to learn to write. You can just read, but
See, so I went to Chinese school when I was growing up here in Australia. And I would say up until probably year 5 and 6, I was decent at Chinese, like decent enough that, you know, I used to enter the speech competitions at the end of every year, and my mum would, you know, give me a speech to basically recite, and I do pretty well in those competitions. And then I think around year 6, like I took a bit of a break from Chinese because we have like what we call our selective schools exam, and my mum wanted me to obviously get into selective school. And then I sort of, you know, didn't really have the same enjoyment out of going to Chinese school, because I think like I probably got left behind. You know, like my friends obviously got a lot better at Chinese than what I did in that time off, and I sort of disengaged from it. So as a result of that, you know, like my Chinese probably started to go, you know, downhill at a slow pace up until I think when at the start of my second year of uni, at the end of my first year of uni, I went back to Singapore. So my dad's originally from Singapore, and I lived with my auntie and my grandma, and basically they don't speak any English. So I went there with like this, you know, very heavily English accented Chinese. And I came out of 3 months and basically, you know, was almost back to normal. You know, I guess the standard that I was maybe back in year 5 and year 6 as a kid. Still very junior with my Chinese, but just, you know, enough to converse and talk and communicate from that perspective. And, you know, I laugh about it now because, you know, Angela and I, we speak to our kids in Chinese. But I feel like my Chinese level is probably diminished because, you know, you're speaking to a child, you know, you're speaking to a 5-year-old and you're conveying things as how a 5-year-old would convey it. And then sometimes it's like, shit, I can't remember the words for this right now. So then you sort of just start throwing the English in there instead.
It's like 5-year-old vocabulary, right?
Yeah, like you just sort of, you think to that level, right? Because, you know, and for me, like I don't really, I would say my Chinese language skills are conversational. They're not like business level. They're not, I don't use it for business. I don't really communicate from that business perspective. Yeah. And then likewise,
that's actually what's kind of happened to me now as well, because now that I'm not working, I used to work full time in a TV company and I was translating Chinese news scripts from Chinese to English every day, right? And then later on, I was doing a show in Chinese where you'd have very high level vocabulary and stuff. But now for the last like 5 years, really, it's just me and my wife talking in Chinese. So yeah, I've gone kind of downhill quite a bit with my advanced vocabulary, you know.
Yeah. So okay, well I want to get to that and ask you some questions on that. But I guess so did you finish university and then go to Taiwan, or was there something in between?
No, Taiwan was my second year of university.
Oh, in your second year. Okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, I went to that school. And that was where I met Angela, and I met so, you know, she was part of, I guess, this group of friends that all hung out together. I don't think we were in the same class. I think we were in a different class, but just through you know what it was a speech competition. Chinese language speech competition, which I came, I think, like 5th or something in, or 9th, I don't know. I got a position in this speech competition anyway, but it was through that I met this whole group of people that we all ended up hanging out together. And Angela was one of those people. And it was cool. Like I was there, I think, for 3 semesters. And it was pretty good. It was pretty good to be in Taiwan. Like a lot of people want to practice their English with you though. So you have to like, I used to pretend I was like from Slovenia or something to like.
So you didn't have good English?
I couldn't speak English. Yeah, I'd be like, and then one time I remember there was someone actually from Slovenia in the library, and they heard me say it, and they come over and they're like, "Oh, I'm from Slovenia too," and I was like, "Oh man, you know, sorry, I just use your country."
What have you done?
Yeah, I didn't want to be like, "Oh, because your country's so obscure, I use it as a." But then I said to them, you know, like, "Oh yeah, you know, I used to go on adventure trips, and I've been to your country, and I've climbed your highest mountain." And that's actually something that it's on their flag. They're really proud of it, their highest mountain, and it's like something all young guys from Slovenia are supposed to do. So she was like, "Wow, you've climbed our mountain! Oh wow!" You know, so it kind of rescued me from the, you know, embarrassment. But that was kind of a thing. Like I would just like try not to let people know that I spoke English.
Okay. And what made you choose Taiwan over, you know, going to somewhere in China?
That was really because of doing Falun Gong, like knowing about the Communist Party's persecution of Falun Gong, and thinking like, I still want to practice my Falun Gong, and I guess I could secretly do it, but I don't really want to be in that kind of environment. So I was like, screw it, I'll ask if I can go to Taiwan. So because normally that school arranges people to go to China, to Beijing Shifan Daxue, but Beijing Normal University. But if you want to arrange something yourself, you can, but you've got to, like, they don't arrange it for you. Yeah, you got to set it all up yourself. So I actually chose that school and went there. And then when I come back a year later, I went and did the exams to get back into the school afterwards. So the whole thing was arranged by me. I found this through a friend. I met this guy who had a house there who rents out some of the rooms to people, and none of the people at his house spoke English, so it was really great. I was living like basically with a
You're
family.
immersed. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think that's the key to learning any language, right? Like that, you need to have that immersiveness in that experience where you're forced to use the language, and then because you're being forced to use the language all around you, it's almost like osmosis. You soak it in as well, and then you learn how to regurgitate words. And I think it's very akin to how children learn language, right? They listen, they look at cues from body language and things like that, and then start to articulate those things, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the kids who went to China, because they all lived together, they didn't use their Chinese as much. And I came back and I realized actually some of them hadn't improved that much in their whole time in China. I remember sitting in the class on the first day back, and the teacher was testing us, and she was like testing on 量词 measure words, right? And she was like, oh, what's the measure word for this? And they would be like, I kept putting my hand up because I remember them.
You need them all.
And then a lot of kids didn't know, and then she just like stopped calling. I was like, yeah, you've answered too many times. Like, how come you guys don't know this? Come on, it's like basic.
Fair enough. So then, I guess when you reflect back on your time in Taiwan, was there any sort of standout memories for you from that?
Yeah, there was this one time we went on. Well, yeah, I mean, a few things, like the Chinese language speech competition was really quite a big thing for me, because I got a prize in that, and I really didn't expect to. I was totally unprepared, but we had this competition at the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall, which is so I joined it at the school first. There's a competition at the school. I hadn't prepared very well. I didn't get a prize at the school, and it was supposed to be the people who won that competition get to go to the national competition. And but strangely, after that competition, they came up to me and they were like, look, we know you weren't prepared very well. If you can just prepare, we'll send you to this national competition. So I was like, oh, all right, yeah, okay. So I actually put a lot of effort into preparing this speech, and I try to talk about the things that I was passionate about, which a lot of it was like because of learning a lot about the human rights stuff in China. I talked quite a bit about that, how Taiwan faces a lot of danger from China and communists and things like that. And in the end, I got I think it was either 5th or 9th place. I can't remember, but 3 kids from our school got prizes that day. One of them actually won. And there was one guy that was like 5th and one was 9th. I can't remember whether I was 5th or 9th. I was probably 9th, but the top 10 all got prizes anyway. So I got a prize. And the school was like so happy because they hadn't had anyone get prizes for a couple of years, and then 3 kids got prizes, and they were like really happy with us and put our photos on the notice board and stuff. It's pretty cool. So that was cool. And then there was another time I went on this this trip with the school, and it's funny. It was like 35 girls. For some reason, not many guys signed up. There's 35
Nothing
girls.
wrong with that.
5 guys, right? And I think,
a good ratio.
Yeah. So when you look at the photo. The photo from the trip, it's like me right in the middle, all these girls, and there's a couple of other guys like dotted around there, but it's a very amusing looking photo. And everyone who sees it's like, wow, I bet you had fun on that trip, And we went to a lot of Taiwan's like beautiful places like Alishan and Sun Moon Lake and stuff, and it was kind of a cool time. I saw a lot of the natural beauty of Taiwan, and got a lot of practice of Chinese and stuff like that. So that was really cool.
And did you I'm sure you tried all the Taiwanese cuisine?
Yeah, man, that's another little thing that's not really how should you say, like not that impressive, but like I got to know this beef noodle restaurant boss quite well because it was near my house where I live, right? And I used to go to his restaurant all the time, and he had been doing like stocks, and then he'd lost a load of money in stocks. So he cut his losses and went and opened a couple of beef noodle restaurants. And he has he has several restaurants now. He's doing pretty well. But he, at that time, he was like actually cooking, like the chef himself, right? And he basically introduced, I remember ordering, rou mian, right? Beef noodles, and saying to him like, dude, why has it got no beef in it? It's just beef broth. There's no chunks of beef. And he's like, you got to order 红烧牛肉面. Right? one that has chunks of beef. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man, thanks. And like, so I used to, he only spoke a little bit of English. So I was like, I can practice with this guy, you know? So I used to go there. I got into the habit of going there about 9 p.m. after most people already finished eating. And it would just be me and him and like one other person. Like, and I'd be chatting to this guy. And still to this day, when I go back to Taiwan, I'll often just go to his restaurant and like surprise him and just turn up. Or I think these days he's not there as much. So I sometimes will send him an email, be like, what days are you going to be there? But one time I went there and then I was like looking for him, and then someone from, you know, one of the restaurants gave him a call, and then he came over on a scooter. But like, I still go there and surprise him. And it's totally cool because he's seen our show on TV now that we did in Taiwan. And he was like, oh man, that guy was, you know, ate at my restaurant. And so it's kind of funny because he knew me before. Like now I'm pretty well known in Taiwan for doing that show. But he knew me from before. So it's kind of, it's pretty cool.
Before you became like a celebrity almost.
Exactly. Yeah. Before that. Yeah.
So, okay. So then you mentioned you were in Taiwan for 3 semesters, was it?
Yeah.
And then did you decide to stay in Taiwan after that, or did you go back to the UK and then go back, or how did the work come about?
No, I went to the UK. I went back to the UK, and then I did this internship in New York at NTD Television, which is like Chinese language, Chinese and English language TV station. At that time, it was more like a non-profit, specifically trying to broadcast uncensored news to China, breaking through censorship and stuff. Now I'm not sure what it is. I think maybe it's for profit now. I don't know, but it's become quite big, like regular TV station now. But at that time it was kind of like more like a charity. And I did a sort of summer internship with them in New York. And then after I graduated, I actually got a job with them, and I went to New York. Immediately. Yeah, like literally a day after my last exam, I went, and I've lived there ever since.
Okay. So you didn't go back to Taiwan. Okay, interesting. So I guess, you know, having lived in essentially 4 places, right? So Hong Kong, the UK, places. Taiwan, and then obviously the States. Did any of those places resonate with you the most? I guess obviously you're still in New York now, but I guess is there one place that is more dear to your heart than the rest?
Yeah, I mean, I think I still got a soft spot for Hong Kong. Although it's really sad seeing what's happened in Hong Kong now. All the like national security law and stuff. You can't there's no freedom of speech there anymore, and a lot of I think a lot of Hong Kongers are moving out. Or a lot of like the ones that care about that kind of stuff are moving out, and probably China is going to try and flood it with people from the mainland and just like take it over. You know, like I'm sure that's their plan. That's kind of like what they've done in like Tibet as well. They've like paid Chinese people to move there and just sort of replace the original people who were there. So it's really sad, but I like the charm of Hong Kong. You know, I think it's a cool city. You got like skyscrapers, and then you got mountains behind. So it's like nature and modern technology. And you could see, like when I was there, you would see like something super modern, like a skyscraper and a luxury yacht, and then there would be like a Chinese junk with sails just sail by on power. You know, it was super cool when I was there. Like cool stuff like that. I think it's changed a lot. They don't have as many non-motorized junks anymore, but then the US actually, I think, has probably the best balance between like, well, it's a huge country first of all, so you can live in wildly different places, you know. New York's actually not that nice as a city. I just liked it because of the people there, you know, and the company there that I worked for was really what made it special for me. But when you actually look at it from a city point of view, it's like, it's not very aesthetic. It's very old and kind of like just dirty, and like you go on the New York subway, it's disgusting. It's like rats and everything. You compare that with Taipei, Jiayun, and it's like, wow, this is like luxury compared to what you have in New York.
Like, you know, an equally large sort of city, like, you know, plenty of people, but just very, very different from an infrastructure and from a cleanliness perspective, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, New York is built mostly 100 years ago, so it was like, I guess they didn't really design it to be clean in the modern sense of it. So, and so like a lot of people, they'll live there for a while and then, you know, maybe make their money there or set up a business and move out, you know, and go somewhere better. In the US, there's so much like opportunity, like in the US. I mean, a lot of people right now are moving out of places like New York and LA, and they're moving to Vegas or Tennessee. Places that have no state income tax, so you can you can cut your tax by about 10% if you move to like, you know, one of those states, you know. And I visited Vegas earlier this year, and I was really impressed. I was like, wow, this place is awesome. You know, it's like you come out, there's no traffic. It's like in New York, you can't like even drive anywhere. It's like gridlocked traffic.
Bumper.
Yeah, all the time. You come out in Vegas and it's just, it's flowing. Like, how is this is a big city, but how is this traffic flowing? It's crazy. It's like, I think it was designed in a later time where they actually designed it for cars. Like New York was designed for a limited number of horses, right? But, and there's so in the YouTube community, there's a big trend now of financial YouTubers, which I guess is the category I fall into with my main business. A big trend of them moving to Vegas. And I went on a podcast of a guy, Graham Stephan, who's like one of the biggest finance YouTubers. And I went on his podcast in Vegas, you know, so like, there's this big trend. So I don't know, maybe in the future I'll move to somewhere like Vegas. But the reason we're in New York still is because there's a school, well, there's like a school here in upstate New York that teaches like Chinese and Chinese dance and stuff. I guess they have schools like that in the city too, but we don't want to be in the city. So this is kind of like the only place that's like, it's more like the countryside, but there's also this Chinese community here that has like a dance school and a Chinese language, you know, a school that our kids are going to that teaches Chinese and stuff. So that's kind of the reason. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously I've got some questions about school, but I want to just sort of unpack a few of the other things before we get there. So so when you moved to New York and you're working for this MTV television station, so you're doing the translating for the news.
I would take news from their Chinese news, and I'd translate it into English to make a China-focused English news program.
Okay. And hang on. I want to go back even further than that. So in Taiwan, the TV show that you did in Taiwan, or the show that you were doing in Taiwan. Yeah. So tell me more about that.
Oh yeah. So I didn't actually do that while I lived in Taiwan. So that was when I graduated, and I moved to New York. I worked for a couple of years doing more like translation and things like that. And then I think it was 2013, I started this show, 老外看中国, with another guy who's from Taiwan, the producer's from Taiwan. And he was great at really pinpointing topics and ideas that Taiwanese people would find interesting. And then, you know, having a Western guy do it in Chinese was like a unique element that people thought was really cool. And there was, I remember one day we did this show about a kind of Chinese soap opera, and making fun of it and cracking some jokes about it and stuff. And I got a text from someone who I knew who was visiting Taiwan. And he was like, oh yeah, I went to a barber's shop and I saw you in the newspaper. And he sent me this photo of me like in the newspaper, right? And yeah, Taiwan's media, they often write articles about viral videos that people have done. And there was this article like, oh, this Western has done a viral video about this thing. And I looked at YouTube and I was like, oh wow, the video's got like 20,000 views now. That's cool. And because we had some success, we were like, yeah, let's keep doing this, you know? And we did like hundreds of videos. And we went from views that, you know, videos that got 20,000 views to videos that got like 1 million views, you know? And it's only 23
And so you were doing this from New York?
Yeah, I was doing it from New York, but then we did start to get like business deals with sponsors and stuff, and they would fly us to Taiwan and we would do stuff in Taiwan as well. So I probably there was about a 2-year period where I went to Taiwan 3 times each year. So many times I'd watched all the movies on the plane, and I moved up in the I had like the gold card and stuff because I've flown that airline so many times, Ever Air. And they what was it? So we would go there. I think I spent probably about 2 months of the year in Taiwan each year at that time, spread across.
And that was just obviously doing promotional stuff and traveling essentially.
Yeah, so I wrote a book and I did a book tour. And then we did there was someone else at our TV station who'd come out with a movie, and I did a movie tour to promote his movie. And then we also worked with 7-Eleven as a sponsor to do a Huandao, round the island trip, right? Which is this thing, you know, like in the USA, you have like the cross-country road trip. In Taiwan, they have Huandao, which is going around the whole island.
Around the island.
And we did a Huandao trip and took in a lot of those scenes. And that was probably my proudest moment from that show. Is like that was really like, yeah, man, this is my creativity could really come out with that show and stuff.
Yep.
And actually, the cameraman I took on that trip is the guy I started a business with later, because he's a really good camera guy, really good creative guy, you know.
Yep.
And yeah, I turned down McDonald's, which is I'm very proud of that. You know, they wanted
You
to
didn't sell out.
I was like, no, I'm not promoting junk food. It's not healthy.
Yep.
I'm not doing it. So I'm very proud of that. I mean, at 7-Eleven, it's not exactly like super healthy, but it's convenient anyway. And you know, some of the stuff they sell there is all right. But yeah, I was pretty, I guess, because McDonald's is just like the quintessential like junk food brand. So I was pretty proud of turning them down. But yeah, that was pretty cool. So yeah, and there, like, I really did turn into a celebrity for several years. I think even if I go there now, people still recognize me, but there was a period of time where I would go there. It's like every 5 minutes, someone comes up to you on the street and it's like, oh, you're the guy from, you know, 老外看中国. Yeah, you're the 老外. And, you know, wanting photos and stuff. And I did a signing, you know, autograph session one time. 500 people came. And every person got an autograph and a photo, right? And it was so much
your face.
Muscles. Yeah, your muscles in your face hurt. And I developed this technique where I talk to people like, hi, and I'm not smiling at all. And then at the moment, just before the photo, I'm like, you know, so that you only have to do it for a split second, so you can rest your facial muscles. And so it's kind of interesting, like how those big actors, like, I don't know, like Tom Cruise or like, you know, really famous actors, like you kind of get a glimpse of how it must be, how annoying it is, you know, like some people when they meet celebrities, they kind of complain like, oh, he's not that friendly, you know, I watched all his movies, I'm his biggest fan, but when I saw him, he was just like not a nice guy. And you're like, I totally understand, man. Like you're pestering the guy, you know, like just leave him alone.
He just wants to eat at the restaurant or wherever he is. So
yeah, it's like let him be, you know. But I also understand the fans as well, because like, so whenever I meet these people, I always try to be like, at least, you know, thank them for watching, and then if they want a photo, just take a photo with them. But then I'm like, yeah, I just, you know, I can't talk for long, I'm just going about my business. But hey, if you want a photo, you know, because it's because of them that you've got the opportunity to do this. But also, if you know, we're all like buddy with every single person you met, you'd have no time.
You never get anything done. So you mentioned you wrote a book. What was the book about?
Oh yeah, that book. Maybe I've got it here. Let's see if I got it. I got a few copies of it still, but I probably can't find it. I'd have to look through my bookshelves and stuff. But yeah, that book was like an autobiographical book. So I spoke a lot about some of the things that we've discussed on this call, you know, like growing up in UK, Hong Kong, climbing mountains, and then finally the part that we're getting to now, which is, you know, actually doing TV shows in Chinese and becoming popular in Taiwan and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I wrote it, I think in 2013, came out in 2014. So it was the story up until then. I also go into some really cool opportunities I had in Taiwan, like visiting Google's headquarters. That was I got to do a video giving a tour of Google's headquarters, and they had some really cool stuff in there. They had like a Japanese style meditation room. They had like a massage chair. They had a ball pit. You know, all the things you'd expect to be at Google, right? Like, I did the same thing at Yahoo's headquarters as well in Taiwan. And yeah, I just got to go to some really unique places that you wouldn't, you know, unless you had that following and the show, you wouldn't get to go to, right?
That's right.
That's something I discovered about being a journalist as well. It's like you get to see things that you wouldn't be able to see as a tourist. Like when I went to Taiwan the first time, and I was doing so actually this company NTD, I already did some freelance work for them while I was living in Taiwan studying. And I think within a month of being in Taiwan, I already seen the president, Ma Ying-jeou, at that time. Like in 1 month, they had got me in a pass to go to this event that the president was at, and I was like 20 feet from the president. It was like crazy, you know. At that time, it was Obama, and I was like, I went to the US for 6 weeks. I didn't see Obama, but it's crazy.
Wow. So, like, and I guess, you know, when you're talking about all these opportunities that you've had, like, it sounds like it all happened very rapid fire, but I'm sure there was obviously quite a gestation period, right? Like, from when did you originally start doing the 老外看中国 show, and then to when it really started to take off? How many years was that?
That was, well, actually that started taking off immediately, but it was because I've done a lot of like news shows in English before that. So doing translating, I was doing freelance news packages. So I did that in Taiwan when I lived there. I did freelance news shooting. And I did, a couple of years of TV production before I started the 老外看中国. But yeah, I think because of the topic and the uniqueness of it, that was able to take off within a couple of months. But there's a lot of preparation, you know, learning the skills and stuff first.
That's right. Okay. So then, so let's go through now. So when did you make this transition to going into doing the YouTube thing and getting out of MTV?
So that was when we started to have kids. And yeah, it was like, I needed money, you know, because essentially at that time they were operating more like a nonprofit. So they, you know, they're paying, but it was not like some amazing salary. You know, you're not going to demand an amazing salary from a nonprofit. You know? So I was like, man, I've got to like actually go and earn some serious money now, because I've been doing this for 5 years. I don't really have any savings, and I want to, you know, it's going to cost a lot. You know, kids are expensive. So I was like, yeah, we've got a lot of experience doing YouTube now. And I also had a Chinese teaching show on YouTube that has over 100,000 subscribers. I'll show you. These are like, this is what YouTube sends you when you get 100,000. So this one's for Learn Chinese Now, which is, that was my Chinese teaching show. And then this one is for the Credit Shifu, which was the one I started after I left. So I was like, oh, you know, we've got a lot of experience in YouTube at a company. We could actually do this ourselves. So me and the cameraman that I took to Taiwan with me, we actually left at the same time. And that was around the time that the new Star Wars movies started coming out. And so we did one channel that was like all about Star Wars. We had a lot of success doing videos just talking about the Star Wars and like fan theories and delving into the backstories and stuff like that from the comics and cartoons and things. And yeah, we blew up. So we had a Star Wars channel. I think it's now at like 600 and something thousand subscribers. And at the same time, I started getting into building my credit score in the US, because when you're a foreigner there, without a credit score, it's very hard to like rent an apartment or get a cell phone plan or anything like that. So I got into that, and then I realized, wait a minute, with these credit score things, we can get these credit cards, and then we can use the points to get luxury travel for free. Wow, that's amazing. So I started collecting the points and, you know, traveling like business class and first class for free, which is awesome. And staying in a lot of luxury hotels. And I made a channel about that as well, the Credit Shifu. And that did pretty well. Not as well as the Star Wars one, but pretty well. And then, so we put both those channels into a company, and we, now, I mean, you can earn a lot of money from YouTube. It's really good. So,
wow. Okay. With the, so you're doing this. So the company has your cameraman, and you do these videos together, correct? Yeah. And was he originally from? He was originally from Taiwan, or was he from the US?
No, he's from the US. He's like an ABC. ABC,
American born Chinese or Taiwanese.
And actually, he's not just a camera anymore. We both kind of do everything. So he's like an on-screen host of some of the. He focuses more on the science fiction content, and I focus more on the financial content. Although I'm still doing some sci-fi shows every week as well. And yeah, we have our own company. We did have a full-time editor, but she left last week. I think we're gonna look for someone else. And we have a lot of contractors that we employ as well. And so, yeah, we've just been building that business, and hopefully in the future, we'll get to do some like actual on location shoots, a bit more interesting. Because right now we're just sort of like talking to the camera, YouTube stuff. But we should, in theory, be able to do some shoots for clients in the future. But we had to stabilize our finances first.
Get the income coming in first. Okay, so then, how did you meet your wife? Like, how did that come about?
Oh, she was the weather reporter at NTD in New York at the TV station.
Okay.
So we just met there and started hanging out, and that was in like, I guess 2013. We met in 2013, got married in 2014. had kids had our first kid in 2016.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2016. That we had Cadence, our first child, in 2016 as well. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the schooling thing. So Angela was telling me that, and I thought it was quite interesting, that obviously with everything going on at the moment with COVID, etc. There's obviously parents who don't really want to get their kids vaccinated, and there's probably teachers that don't want to get vaccinated as well.
That's great.
Yeah. So tell me more about this school. So what?
Yeah. So in New York, in New York City, there's a requirement now. City school employees have to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
We now run. Well, we don't run it ourselves, but with a group of parents, we set up a school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there's still certain things that you're supposed to do, right? Like, but if you set up your own school, you can be a bit more understanding of people.
Yeah.
I think it's only government-run schools that the teachers are being forced to get vaccinated. Right now, I don't think kids have to get vaccinated for COVID. We don't have that yet. And if that happens, I don't know whether I really want to do that. I'm not going to take it. And if I'm not going to take it, I don't think I want to give it to my kids, You have to unfortunately have regular vaccines though. Like in New York State, we used to have a religious exemption where you could, if you say like, oh, my religion, I don't believe in vaccines, you didn't have to do it for any vaccine. But a few years ago, that was stopped by the Governor Cuomo, who's now disgraced and resigned for something else, right? Sexual abuse allegations or something. And they used the excuse that there were these Jewish schools, these Jewish religious schools, that these people were not vaccinated, and then there were like this measles outbreak. But actually, I was talking to a reporter who went to those schools, and they talked to the people there, and they said, actually, the vaccination rate is not unusually low. It was still like around like 70% or something in those schools. And so they kind of think that it was more like the governor used it as an excuse.
A bit of a hit piece.
Exactly. Get the media to say that this is the reason, and then we can get through this legislation and people will accept it. So New York State lost its religious exemption. So right now we have to get the vaccines. Although I think there is an exemption where you can do some antibody testing, and if they still have the antibody, you don't have to get all these boosters. So that's definitely, I'm not like totally anti-vax. I'm just like, I want it to be safe. And I think that there's a lot of like,
we're still in the early stages, right? At the end of the day.
Like for the COVID one, it's really, I don't think it's safe. It must be making a lot of money for Pfizer and these companies, so it's obvious to see that there's a self-interest thing going there.
I think for me, like I sort of view it, it's more about, you should have the right to choose, right? At the end of the day, if you want to protect yourself and get the vaccine, that's great. Like I've got nothing against that. But you should be able to choose, what vaccine you want first of all. So there are other vaccines like Novavax and some of these other companies that haven't been necessarily approved in Australia yet. So our main ones are obviously still AstraZeneca and Pfizer. And like I think at the moment our government is at least in New South Wales, they're chasing like a 80% vaccination, double dose vaccination rate, and then potentially a 90% to allow freedom to come back. The question,
Australia
part
is
of the
crazy.
question,
I keep seeing videos from Australia.
So tell us what you see, because obviously you're viewing it from a different perspective, right? So what have you seen?
Well, I've seen crazy stuff. I don't know if that's the whole country or maybe there's just certain cities that are really totalitarian, but I've heard like you can't go 5 kilometers from your house. You got to wear a mask even when you're outside on your own. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. Yep.
I would have been arrested so many times, man, if I lived in Australia, seriously. And you've got I've seen some protests where, the police just like come and like throw people on the ground, or there was one like woman getting choked because she wasn't wearing a mask and the police are like choking her. And it's like, it so just doesn't make any sense because a mask make it hard for you to breathe, right? And so she's not wearing it. So the police come and choke her, which makes it hard for you to breathe. It's like, you're just abusing people at this stage, I also heard about New Zealand, like they had one COVID case and they shut down the whole country. You
Yeah.
heard about that?
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah. So the question I want to ask you, obviously, because in the States, like COVID's, been rampant through there as well, right? So if there's anyone that's, can talk to me from a US perspective in terms of, what's sort of been the narrative, not forget about narrative. Let's say what's sort of been the emotion attached to it, right? Like, have you had COVID yourself?
So I'm actually, this is actually interesting. I'm going to get myself tested because I had earlier this year, there was actually a month, for about a month, I felt terrible. And I could have been the COVID. I don't know. I'm not normally someone who like really goes to the doctor or takes medicine. I just do my qigong, and I believe that like natural like healing and stuff like that. And actually I did take some like mild painkillers, right, for headaches and stuff when I had this illness, and it was very bad. Like it was crazy for about 2 weeks. It was awful. And if I had a real job where I had to actually go to a company, I would have had to have taken 2 or 3 weeks off of work, right? Because it would have been so bad. But actually I found the only thing that helped was not even pain. Like a painkiller did not help. The only thing that helped was doing my Falun Gong exercises, doing this qigong meditation. One night I even woke up at 3 a.m, couldn't sleep because I was like, it's so bad. And I did an hour of like
breathing
exercise and meditation, and then went back to sleep at like 5 or something, and slept until 10. But so I've actually booked a test to get tested for the antibodies. I'm quite interested to see if it was COVID or if it was just a coincidence. But it's probably COVID, But last year, I mean, in 2020, when it all started around Easter 2020, we were like, oh, okay, cool. It sounds pretty extreme. I've been following it in China, seeing the scenes out of Wuhan of people like collapsing on the street and stuff. So I was like, oh, wow, okay. It seems like there really is a thing for this. There really is, a bad thing. So we were like, fine, we'll do this lockdown, for a few weeks. But then it started to become apparent that like, oh, people aren't collapsing on the street. And most people who get this, 99% of people who get it actually recover from it, no problem. It's only the ones who are like elderly or have a health problem that seem to be, having a bad time with it.
Of course.
And so like very quickly we realized that this is really nothing that extreme, unless you're someone who's like at risk, person. And actually, luckily in New York, it went back to normal pretty quick. So by summer last year, like basically everything, or maybe it wasn't summer, maybe it was late summer, like September last year. Basically everything had reopened. Even maybe midsummer. Basically everything. The only difference, we had to wear a mask if you went into a store, or in a restaurant, you had to wear a mask as you walked in. And then once you sit
then
down,
take it off to eat.
Take it off, right? I even remember one time we went to this restaurant. We were going on a ski trip to Vermont, and we stopped at this restaurant halfway. And there's one in our party, in our group. He's pretty short. He's like 5'4" or something. And there was quite a high table with these high chairs. And my friends, most of the people were sitting down, so they were wearing no masks. And he went over to their table to talk to them. And then a waitress came over and said, hey, if you're standing, you got to put your mask on. He was like, my face is at the exact same height as them. And she was like, yeah, but you're not standing. You're not sitting, you're standing. That's the rule. If you're standing, it's like, what logic is this?
It's almost like, so I often talk about the story about, culture and the 5 monkeys. I don't know if you've heard this story, but it's like, you put 5 monkeys in a cage and you put a hand of bananas at the top and a ladder for them to climb up and get it, right? But every time a monkey goes for the bananas, they spray them all with the water chemical, right? So eventually the 5 monkeys in the cage decide, oh, look, there's no point going for those bananas because every time we do, we all get punished. So then they cycle one of the monkeys out, put a new monkey in, and that monkey goes, look at these idiots, I'm going to go get them bananas. So he starts to climb up, but the other monkeys start pulling him down, right? And then so he tries a few times and eventually he gives up. And then they essentially go through and cycle out all 5 monkeys, so that now there are 5 monkeys in the cage. None of them go for the bananas, but nobody knows why. Right?
So you get to a stage where no monkey has seen the water cannon, but they've just
because it's because their peers keep pulling them down that no monkeys go for it, right? And like when you were just talking about it, it made me think of there was a video, like one of those YouTube videos or something like that, where it was like people waiting in like a doctor's waiting room or something like that.
I've seen that.
And there would be and then there'd be the timer, right? Like so every minute or something, there'd be or 30 seconds, there'd be a beep, and everybody would stand up. Yeah. And then they'd rope all these people into standing up, and then cycle. One person would go into the office, and the next person will come in, and then they'd see everybody standing up every 30 seconds or something, and then they'd start to do it as well, right? No reasonable logic behind it, but because everybody else is doing it.
I feel like I'm the kind of guy that wouldn't work on. I would just sit there and I'd be like, well, what are these idiots doing? Why are you standing up?
Can somebody explain it to me? Like, So I guess from what are the current COVID rules for you guys over there?
I don't know. To be honest, it's back to normal. You don't have to wear masks anymore. That stopped. Oh, the day that stopped, that was so great. My friend texted me, he's like, hey, go into the local store, And I was like, why? He's like, just go in, try it. And so I went in there, and the sign on the door about masks had gone, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the kind of guy who's like, well, if I don't see a sign, I'm not putting a mask on, right? It's your fault you didn't put the sign, so screw you. So I went in, and I was like, no one's in masks. And I saw some other guy come in, and he's wearing a mask, and he looked around, he saw everyone without masks. He's like, oh, he takes off his mask, and he's like, yeah, so happy, And, but now there appears to be no rules for like businesses closed or anything like that, lockdowns, but they're now coming in with like ridiculous vaccine mandates. Like if you're a company and you have over 100 employees, you have to get people vaccinated, or your employees have to be vaccinated, or you have to do testing every week. And that asks the question as well, what if you're a company and all your employees are remote? Do you still have to do vaccines and get them tested? And what about natural immunity? There's no, that's not worked into it. Like, so if you go and get a test,
if you already had COVID and that's right.
There's no pass.
So there's none of that in Australia either. So at the moment, you need to be double vaccinated.
It's suspicious. It makes you think all about money.
Well, the crazy one that my wife and I were talking about was that, like, even so, New South Wales is our state. Sydney is, the region where we're living. Like, there's obviously, local government areas inside Sydney. But then in like the country areas of New South Wales, like areas where there's been like 0 cases, in a long period of time. So they don't have any COVID cases at the present moment. But they basically lose the freedom that they've got until they go and get double vaccinated now. So, my wife was talking to this guy in Wagga Wagga, which is like a country area in New South Wales, and he's like, yeah, I've lost my job because, well, I'm going to lose my job when these restrictions come in because I won't be double vaccinated. Like, so you got it. Well, whether even if you want to do it, like you're supposed to wait 4 weeks until you go for your second dose as well anyway. So you're gonna be off work for a period of time. So it's like one of those things where
there's no pass. There's no pass if you're waiting for your second shot.
No. Yeah, and you can't even and that's the thing. Like, even if you've got you go and get a negative COVID test, that is now no longer good enough. So for a period of time, that was if you could get tested, and then if you had a clear test, you could attend work. And then it slowly changed to the point where now it's like, unless you're double vaccinated, you have no freedoms. So basically, even our premier has said, this is a sad day. This is what she said in the press conference today. She said, this is a sad day for those individuals who are unvaccinated, because you're going to have to wait.
Change it if she recognizes it's a sad day.
Because you now have to wait until the 1st of December before you get the same freedoms as everyone else who's double vaccinated. Now,
you see, that wouldn't work here because we've all got guns, and I think it would be like, if they did it to that stage here, I mean, like what we see in Australia, it looks tyrannical. It looks like the work of the Chinese Communist Party, something like that.
I'm going to send you a link to a have you watched Hamilton? Musical? Hamilton, the musical?
Oh, Hamilton. I've heard a lot about it. I've seen some clips from it. I haven't seen it.
Okay. I'll send you this parody that I did. I did this parody, and basically changed the words from you'll be back to you'll be jabbed. And
cool.
And it was just interesting, like, you see when you look at some of the videos, and look, I don't think it's right, from what I don't think is right is that we become very divided. And I think you guys have probably got the same thing, you know, when you talk about, you know, I guess, you know, Republican versus Democrat, like that's probably a very divisive thing for you guys over in the States as well, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like, yeah,
they're doing the same thing as Australia, I think, in the some of the big cities. Like in New York City, if you want to eat in a restaurant, you have to have a vaccine card, right? You have to show that you're vaccinated. You could just fake it. The card's really easy to fake, so you could just fake it. But a lot of Black people now, they're much more distrusting of the vaccine, because there have been instances in the past where FDA actually did experiments on Black population, right? Releasing certain chemicals into the water supply in certain neighborhoods and stuff. And the evidence has been made public over the years, right? And so they're really like mistrusting of the vaccine way more than regular, you know, people in society, right? So it's funny, like Black Lives Matter in New York City, the organization, which in general, I don't really agree with most of their stuff because they are kind of a Marxist organization. Like the main cause everyone agrees with, right? It's just like human rights for all, right? But they have a little bit of a Marxist, you know, influence in their organization. So I don't really support the organization. But in New York City, they're now, you know, they're now protesting the vaccine mandate, saying it's racist because so many of these Black people are not getting the vaccine because they mistrust it, because they know what the FDA has done in the past. And so it's funny. It's like, wow, you know, during the riots last year, I didn't really agree with a lot of the stuff you guys were doing, like smashing up businesses to prove your point, you know, but now I can really stand shoulder to shoulder with them because this is a cause I can really get behind and totally agree with you on, you know. It is racist. And it's so like, it harks back to like the, you know, in New York City, African Americans used to not be able to go downtown and go to restaurants. I think Muhammad Ali, there was like a famous quote from him, was like, I can like a boxing title, but I can't even go and eat in a restaurant downtown, right? And now it's like the same thing, because there's a much larger portion of these African Americans who are not getting the vaccine, and they're going to have this problem. Like they can't go into a restaurant, and it's almost like it's because of their race, you know? And so like, it's really,
we've just introduced a different layer of discrimination, right? So we've done such great work in society to remove these layers of discrimination. So we don't discriminate on race anymore. We don't discriminate on sexual orientation anymore. But now, you know, you could be, you know, whether you're gay or whatever color of person or color you are, if you're in the vaccinated category, you can carry out some segregation or some discrimination on those who are unvaccinated. Like it sounds like, you know, it's silly really, but you know, even when I was listening to our premier she was on a TV show, you know, this morning, and it was one of the points that they were like, you know, that the TV presenter was trying to present was like, oh, so you could have a football coach who is unvaccinated that obviously can't, you know, coach your kids, but on the 1st of December, they will be able to do that. And she's like, well, yes. And then it's like, you don't have concerns about unvaccinated people mingling with vaccinated people? Like,
why on the 1st of December?
That's the I guess the end date that they put in place to, you know, that they're going to achieve their 90% target or whatever the case may be, right? So they've set this arbitrary target that it's, you know, the 1st of December at this stage. And you know, and it was really interesting when you listen, you know, when I was listening to the interview this morning, and the shit that they were saying, like, it's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, why are you concerned about unvaccinated people mingling with vaccinated people? Who are you concerned for? Are you concerned for the vaccinated people or the unvaccinated people? Because at the end of the day, if you're vaccinated and the vaccine's working, you got nothing to worry about, right? So who are you protecting? Like, so, you know,
it's a really strange logic. And when you even look at the amount of cases and deaths now as well, it's really down to the level where it's kind of like just a disease like flu or something that's in the background constantly. You know, people don't realize that like 50,000 people, I think, in the US die of flu every year, right? But it's like they're elderly people who kind of get picked off by it, unfortunately. It's just like the natural part of cycle of life, you know? And I think COVID is, I'm no expert, but COVID is probably getting to the stage where the
death rate, I think, of Delta is lower than the original Alpha variant, right?
Exactly, right? The deadlier strains die off, and then the more weaker strains, because the deadliest strains kill people before they have a chance to spread it. So those strains kind of die off. I've heard like a doctor like explaining kind of the science of it before, and it's like the strains afterwards are more contagious but less deadly. So I really think it's going to end up, it's just something like a minor nuisance, really, like colds and flus and deadly for elderly people, but not for
regular. Did you guys over there have any, like, I guess, were police trying to enforce any of the restrictions, like in terms of masks and?
No, I think here, because Americans are all about freedom, right? So even when there were so-called restrictions, like, for example, if I drove to Vermont, I would, in theory, have to quarantine for 14 days before I could actually do anything, right? And so but we would always go skiing on like one night, 1 day trips, right? So we would go there throughout the winter, and you get to the hotel and the guy would be like, yeah, just, sign this to make sure you've been in Vermont for 14 days, that you've done the quarantine. Oh, okay. And I like just turned up there from New York. And then you get to the ski place and you got to sign another one, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, we've been here 14 days. Or you go into a restaurant and they're like, oh, we have to take down your phone number just in case of contact tracing. It's like, oh, okay, like fake phone number. And, and you look at every car in the parking lot for the ski mountain, half of them are from New York, because we have the license plate where the state, right? So New York plates. And it's like, you spoke to someone on the chairlift and be like, hey, did you guys do the quarantine? Like, no. And these places, their livelihood is based on people coming skiing there to pay for their, so they're not going to like go all out and really check. And so I think it's like, it's just not possible. I think the people are kind of winning here in that, like, maybe they go through the motions and they like give you, all right, you just got to sign the form. Not my problem if you're lying, but come to my business, spend your money here. So I think that's kind of like really the vibe. I forgot the question. What was it?
No. I'm just curious in terms of like how, even from like a media perspective, like how do they approach it? Is there much? Because I know for our media, it's very fear driven. Like they're trying to drive a lot of fear into people. And that's hence why, but I feel like people are very divided. It's become so divisive. Like there's almost like a peer pressure element. Like I think there's two elements to it, right? Like it's, if you go and say that, hey, I think you should get the vaccine because you're going to protect other people. Like reality is that the vaccine is there to protect you, right?
Yeah, so it's a very weird, and there's no science really to back that up. Like, oh, if you've had the vaccine, like if you're unsymptomatic, I heard a physician explaining the thing, like they say, oh, there's unsymptomatic spread. Yeah, it's true that if you could have the virus in your body, like everyone has it in their body actually, in very small quantities. But the time when you're really spreading it is when you're symptomatic, because that means there's a lot of it in your body to be able to cause that. And that doesn't happen unless you have a lot of it in your body. And then you're sneezing and you're coughing and you're actually spreading it. So, they say all this stuff that's not really, in my mind, is not based on science. When we went to the UK at Christmas, that was the real crazy time. So we get there and, my family, they believe a lot of the stuff. So they're like, oh, you should at least quarantine for a little bit. So we quarantined for like 5 days. And then you could do a thing where you have a test on your 5th day, and then if it's negative, you're out of the quarantine. So we did that, right? Instead, because otherwise you have to quarantine for like 10 days, which is like almost the whole trip, right? And I did sort of my version of quarantine, where I sort of just like, I'm not going to go to too many places with lots of people, but I'm not going to be a prisoner in my own country, right? I'm not going to just stay in the house like a stupid, right? So we rented this Airbnb, but then we still went out and like went to the play park for the kids and stuff like that, but they all believe it. And then after we were there for a few days, the government said, because of there's high cases now, Christmas is cancelled. You can't visit your family for Christmas. And also different areas now have different status levels, different tiers, like tier 3, tier 4, whatever. And if your tier is different to the neighboring area, you can't drive into the neighboring county or whatever, right? So I was like, this is so peculiar, right? And then all the restaurants shut down, and my family was like, oh, what a shame, Christmas is cancelled, we can't do Christmas. Like, you can't do Christmas because you've seen on TV that you can't do Christmas? Like, you have real life living people here who are your family, you're putting the government above your, you know, actual real life family. It's crazy. And yeah, so I still persuaded a few people to like come around and stuff, you know, for Christmas. But it was very weird how they just like, oh, government said Christmas is cancelled, so we'll just do it. It's like our most important festival, and you're canceling it just because of, you know, nothing's really changed since yesterday. And then we also went and visited a lot of people, like totally broke all the rules. I don't care saying this because I'm probably not going back to the UK for any time soon. So, you know, UK, you know, try and extradite me. Anyway, so I went and rented a car. And then when I was renting the car, the woman was like, oh, where are you going? And I was like, oh yeah, you know, we're just dropping off some gifts to people locally within this area. And we drove like 4 hours to the other end of the country to some area where it was only tier 3 instead of tier 4, and went and stayed with some friends there who were like totally, you know, red pilled, like, you know, they're not, you know, in the illusion at all. And they're like, oh yeah, these rules are totally ridiculous. But my parents were like, oh yeah, if you get stopped by the police on the way, you actually have to tell them like where you're going, and you have to have like a reason why you're going there and stuff like that. Which is kind of crazy. And then the last night I stayed at a hotel at the airport, and when I checked into the hotel, I was just like, oh yeah, hi. And then they were like, and so why are you staying here? I was like, what do you mean, why am I staying here? I need a place to
go
stay.
to the airport.
Yeah. Well, I was just like, I need a place to stay. It's really none of your business why I'm staying. And then they were like, well, no, you have to actually, because you're not allowed to stay here unless you've actually got a flight. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Okay, I've got a flight. Yeah. And they're like, well, you have to show me your ticket. And it's like, oh God, okay, I pick out this ticket. Here you go, check out this. And it was like, yeah, that's kind of a little bit unheard of here in the US, like that level of government control and, you know, intrusiveness into your life. But that's probably nowhere near as crazy as it is in Australia.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, we have an app that we go and check in at places. So, you know, you basically put your camera on and you scan a QR code. You can check yourself in. You can check your dependents in if they're set up on your app, and then you're supposed to check yourself out. So the guys behind that is that it's obvious it's the contact tracing. So
what happens if you don't do it?
Well, this is the thing. Like, you know, some businesses they'll have like security out the front, and then they'll ask you to do it. And then other places, you know, you might be able to get away with it. At the end of the day, you know, if you do end up being a positive case. So like, I know one of my friends got COVID, and he said like he only got contacted like 4 days after he did his test. Now, 4 days could be, you know, depending on what you've got in your fridge at the time, could be quite a long time to isolate. Like you might have had to go back out to buy food, or you might have had to go and order something and had contact with a delivery driver or whatever. You don't know, right? But there's all these sort of loopholes that could be in it. But the idea behind it was that, you know, when case numbers were low, you could theoretically go and contact trace, you know, where has it occurred. And I think our government sort of started to move away from that because it became so unmanageable to start listing every single supermarket and every single, you know, place that had been visited by a COVID positive person. I think, you know, what's lacking in Australia is that we don't really have a balanced approach to it. So, you know, my friends that got COVID, they got nothing from the New South Wales government. There's no, you know, here's the protocol for what you should do now that you've got COVID. It's basically, you know, if you get worse, here's the number, call the ambulance, get taken to hospital, and we'll deal with you in the hospital admission system, right? So a big part of the planning was to try and, you know, flatten the curve so that we don't have as many admissions into ICU, right? Or hospital, I should say. But what are you actually doing to help the people before they get to that stage, right? It's sort of just, okay, well, you're positive. Now, tell us everywhere you've been, because that's more important than actually, you know, giving you some protocols or trying to guide you in terms of how do you help to recover, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, doesn't matter, right? So you just basically get told, you know, call us if you get worse and whatever else. So that's one thing that's lacking. And then I think, you know, the other side of it is that, you know, it's really, there's no, and I think, you know, in some places like the UK, they give you like incentives to go and get vaccinated and things like that. But it's, you know, we've very much got, you know, the big old, you know, stick out, and the stick is, you know, do it or you don't get your freedom, and your carrot is basically you do it and you get your freedom.
So have you managed not to do it?
Yeah, so like essentially I haven't done it as yet. For me, it's not really that I'm against vaccination. My kids have been vaccinated for polio, measles, blah, blah, blah. But it's more that I think I should be able to choose the vaccine that I want. At the end of the day, for me, when I've done my reading, the vaccine that I would like to get if I had to choose one would be the Novavax vaccine. But in Australia, that hasn't been approved yet. So the Therapeutic Goods, TGA, Therapeutic Goods Association, hasn't approved the Novavax vaccine yet. And I guess, so the way I look at it is I look at it from, what are the rules, and the rules are basically, even if you had COVID, they still want you to get double vaccinated. So, I know in countries like, in Singapore, as an example, they treat a person who has had COVID as a double vaccinated person, because they've obviously, if you've had it and survived, you have some form of antibodies for it, right? So, provided you've had your antibody test or whatever, you're free as a vaccinated individual. So I think, we just have a very one-sided sort of one size fits all response to the entire thing. And I think part of that then sort of then creates this divisiveness in our community, where people are sort of like, I'm sure my friends probably think I'm crazy for not doing it, and then I've had friends say to me, oh, Johnny, it's your social responsibility to do that.
Yeah, I've had people say that too.
Yeah, but it's like my social responsibility to protect myself. Like, it doesn't quite compute for me. It's like, and they're like, oh, but if everybody does it, then we'll get our freedom back. So it's like, hey, it was never their freedom to take away.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. It's like God-given freedom. It should be, humans shouldn't be able to take it from you.
Well, if you don't have ownership and autonomy in terms of what you put into your own body, how can you have ownership or autonomy on any other decision that you make, right? Yeah. And then we start to get into these arguments, like not necessarily arguments, but like I enjoy the discussion, because at the end of the day, I want to challenge my thinking as well, because perhaps maybe I'm wrong about some of these things that I'm thinking about, right? So we start to discuss, okay, but if there are no rules, then like you wouldn't have a society that works. Right. And I'm like, yeah, okay, infrastructure is important, right? You need to have infrastructure, right? You need to have infrastructure around, whether it's medicine, whether it's around roads, whether it's around business, right? And I'm not against infrastructure, right? Like, where have I said that I don't believe in infrastructure? All I'm saying is that, when it comes to certain things, you have a choice, right? But, for other people, they sort of look at it and they go, well, it's there to protect you, or the government has our best interest at heart. And so irrespective of, whether you're healthy, you're unhealthy, they don't really look at those sorts of things. It's a one size fits all sort of scenario. And I guess, at the start, it was lockdown. We want to get 0 cases, right? And I think, I think, it was a fair decision to make at the start of it last year, when, we don't have the data. We don't have what is the latest information coming out, right?
Yeah, everyone was accepting of it when it first began.
Absolutely.
Like, wow, crazy. Okay, we'll do it for a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, like if you just imagine that it was like a death rate like Ebola or something like that. Yeah, you'd absolutely want to lock down and not really associate with anyone for fear that they could have it. But then as we sort of go through it, like one of the stats that I was looking at was we've essentially had no flu season this year. Like when you look at the chart, they had to actually include another chart on the government data for this year's flu season, because when you look at it, like everything else, all the previous years was like this, and then for this last year was like this, right? And so then they had to go and give you a new axis so that you could actually see the little peaks and troughs.
Oh, because you couldn't see it because it was
you couldn't see it relative to previous years, right? So I don't say that to, I don't think, I'm not trying to diminish COVID. Like I think, would I want to get it? I don't think anybody wants to get it, right? Like
my guess about the flu thing is that because COVID affects people who are, weak and immune compromised, and it's more contagious than the flu, I'm guessing maybe they just got the COVID instead of the flu.
Yeah.
Or there's another theory that the COVID tests are actually confusing flu and COVID. And sometimes because the sensitivity of the test is so high, people who have the flu, because they also have some COVID in their body, but it's not enough to affect them, they get marked as COVID. So I don't know. It could be either of those two things in my mind.
Yeah. So like, at the end of the day, I don't, it doesn't bother me, what somebody else wants to do. Like in the same sense, right? Like that it doesn't bother me what somebody else wants to do. Why should it bother them what I choose to do, right? So, and so then, when you start, I think there's other aspects that go into that. You got to look at the mental health aspect, But part of the reason why I started this podcast was that I had a mate who committed suicide back in 2019, so Easter 2019. So basically, almost 12 months before like the peak pandemic sort of hit worldwide. And like, even between me and my high school friends, we were sort of saying, imagine Age was still around in these times. Like if he felt lonely back then, when we could still hang out and do all those sorts of things, like, it sounds horrible, but it's almost a blessing for him to not have to have gone through these tough times, right? Because if you're feeling isolated enough to go and commit to doing something that he did, and like fuck, I miss the bloke, right? Like he's a mate, and we're all shocked that when it happened. But at the same time, it's like, part of me is also like, if everything happens for a reason, well, perhaps it was good reasoning for that to happen at that point in time, because he didn't have to go through this drawn out process that could have ended in the same thing. And then in that particular instance, none of us could be there to say goodbye to him, right? Because there's restrictions on funerals and all that sort of stuff.
It must be really lonely for people who like don't have a family, or don't like people who are single, unmarried, or don't, or just not in a relationship at the time, and they're just on their own. Must be crazy,
Yeah. So like, it is such a crazy time, and like the images that you see out of Melbourne, where you've got police and protesters, at each other's throats. Like I feel sorry for both. I don't just feel for the protesters. I feel for the police as well, because they've gotten into this tribal mentality that maybe and like I have a friend who's in the police force, and I was messaging with her the other day, and I said I feel sorry for you. Like it'd be so hard to do any police work at this point in time, because people sort of view it as, irrespective of who you are as a person. They're not viewing you as a person anymore. They're viewing you as the other team, right? They're viewing you as the other side. And, if you're on the protester side and you're, and our media is basically labeling the protesters as scum or selfish people.
They use a lot of adjectives. It's not really objective reporting, I see those reports, like, and UK has it as well. They say like, anti-vax thugs or nutters or something like that, and you're like, this is not objective. Like the first rule of being a reporter is you're supposed to be objective, and they're totally not. But I think the only thing that really is going to stop it is just a mass peaceful protest. When people reach the critical mass, that so many people are annoyed at it that they just 500,000 or 1 million people just come out onto the street, and the police are just like, well, we can't do anything. We got to just stand by. We got to sit this one out. And then the politicians take note, and they're like, well, 500,000 people are like outside the parliament. We'd better.
Well, that's the thing. You can't even attend the protest, because they basically, because of the lockdown rules, if you're outside 5Ks of the LGA, they can fine you. They'll put you.
So if you're driving in your car, you could literally get stopped and actually.
There were suburbs where there was checkpoints set up. And basically, they would stop every single car and ask them, "Where are you going? Where? Show us your address. Why are you traveling?" Right?
Wow, so it's pretty dystopian.
It's almost like you normally would read about things that happen like this, right? But
I remember seeing one. There's one from the UK where there's no 5 kilometer rule or any specific rule, but they had basically said you can only go in your local area, right? So there was a woman lining up for a coffee, and the police did a spot check, and they said, "Where are you from? And she's like, "Oh, I'm from this neighborhood," right? And they said, "That's not local." And she said, "Yeah, it's 2 miles down the road. I jogged here on my morning jog." And they were like, "No, that's not local. You aren't allowed to get a coffee from this coffee stand. You have to go home." And it's like, there is no even definition of what local is. Like local to one person, maybe, one person like 2 miles. Oh my God, I'd never walk that. But this woman was like some jogger. She was like, 2 miles is nothing. It's like local to me, So
that's right.
That's crazy. But Australia is even more crazy with the actual hard limit of like 5 kilometers and you're done.
What I guess, obviously you see some of the crazy videos, but like from a reporting perspective, how do they paint it? Do they paint it as are they painting a side in terms of who's right and who's wrong, or are they just saying that Australia's crazy?
Well, the ones that are coming out of Australia, the Australian media, they look pretty biased, against these protesters. They're obviously showing protesters like, I remember there was some kids like in a park or something, just like they got some beers and they were just sitting down like by the sea or something, right, in Melbourne or Sydney or somewhere. And they sent a helicopter to like, they saw them on a helicopter, and then they sent some squad cars, and those kids were like in cuffs and stuff, and like all they were doing was just sitting down. They were like, they painted them as complete thugs. But then a lot of the ones I see here are just like raw footage coming out of Australia of just like getting beaten up by police and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and so but like when they report on it, they just show the image. They don't really talk about, do they say anything about the situation in Australia? Do they say it's bad, good? Like
foreign media? Yeah, I haven't really seen reports. US is very US centered, so you don't often see like detailed reporting of stuff in other countries unless it's something really big. So I haven't really seen, but I've seen a lot of raw footage being shared by certain websites and stuff, like just showing like the crazy stuff happening there. So
the craziness. No, fair enough. So okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's get off all that sort of stuff. So with your videos, I just wanted to ask, when it came to sort of building up your YouTube channel. So obviously you got a few different YouTube channels as well. What are your sort of, have you got any tips? Have you got any highlights that you think are important to share?
For YouTube, like, well, it's very competitive now. So it's way more competitive than it used to be. And it helps if you already know a little bit about photography and stuff, so that you can actually have a high quality images from the start, right? You don't want to, if you just do on a cell phone or something, you're not gonna, it's not like in the past where a mobile phone video could go viral. TikTok maybe, but not on YouTube as much these days. So you need to actually reach quite a pro standard even at the beginning. And you also, following trends is probably the biggest recommendation I can give people who want to start it. Like pick a topic to talk about, and then if there's some news about that topic at that time, that's a really easy way to trend, because a lot of people are interested in that particular topic. Like we did it with Star Wars, my credit card channel. There was this new credit card that came out at that time that was really popular, and I did a lot of videos about that. That's kind of how you get viral, is by following trending topics. But you have to do it.
Sorry, you go.
You have to do it with good quality, and you have to pace your videos so that people keep watching. YouTube knows how long people watch for. So if people watch like 20%, click off, your video will just die. Because viewer retention is a very important metric.
So what do you classify, or what do you think is a good viewer retention metric?
So the average is about 50%. If you can get it to 70%, your video is going to get a lot of views. Well, as long as it has a good click-through rate. So click-through rate is the start. How many people click on the video? I remember getting a video with a 28% click-through rate on the first day, and I had it got 500,000 views. So click-through rate gets them in, and then once they're watching, you could have a video that the click-through rate's a bit lower, but because the audience retention is high, maybe 70%, YouTube will still send it out to more people. And then also the topic is important too, because it's a very niche topic. People within that niche will watch it, but then it won't get many views beyond that, because the audience has been exhausted. There's not enough people interested in that topic.
So I think that's what happened with my YouTube channel. So I'm at about 700 odd subscribers at the present moment. And originally when I started it, so basically all I was doing was I was doing first of all, I put my podcast up there, and originally my podcasts weren't good for YouTube anyway, because essentially it was audio only. So the first 30 something episodes up until probably like 2 or 3 episodes ago were all just audio only, right? So my podcast I was doing it via Libsyn and sending it to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. And that was predominantly where my listenership would be. But I thought, I'll put them up onto YouTube anyway. Who knows? Blah blah blah. And then, so then what I started doing, and it was more just like my YouTube is just more like self-interesting. So like what I enjoy doing, I actually do like martial arts swim studies. So and I was just studying fights that I thought were interesting and highlighted something that I wanted to work on, right? So really, that was the only reason why I started. It was more for self-interest and me trying to better myself in my martial arts as well. And then I had one video that took off. And then got to like, I don't know, it's like 55,000 views now or something like that. And it started to, snowball a bit of subscribers. And I'm like, oh shit, maybe I can do something with this.
What was that video?
So that was my film study of Ang Lan Sung versus Rhino Derrida, their first fight in one championship. And it was just like,
analyzing a fight.
Yeah. So basically, I was just, studying the fight. And then I was clipping up certain sequences and highlighting some of the things that I thought were great technical elements. And that for some reason that one garnered some views. And then the rest of them have sort of been, sorry, what were you gonna say?
So if you want to be successful, you need to repeat something similar.
Yeah.
You've got to do that fight analysis again.
I've been doing them like consistently.
Okay, but
not all of them hit
the
the mark. Some of them get like a few thousand and things like that, but it's really hit and miss. And I just for me, I'm not really too.
You'll go up, you have a big viral video, people will subscribe from that video, and then you'll go back down. You just have regular videos, but your baseline rises up a little bit each time, the amount of minimum views that you can guarantee. But yeah, you got to keep it on topic with the channel. So I would almost have like your fight analysis channel and your podcast channel as separate.
I think I'm too lazy for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so focused, and it gets a bit boring for people because sometimes if you do the same thing over and over again, YouTube will just keep pushing your videos out. But if you try different topics, you'll get no views. And it's like, oh man, it's like, I feel they got to change it. Actually, there's a little bit of a weakness in the algorithm there, that if a creator tries to branch out, often it doesn't do very well. So that's kind of like a weakness that they have, that I think, hopefully in the future they might change that, because right now it's very repetitive. I've actually got to go a little bit in a bit because I got to start work. So maybe we can, if there are any more questions you want to wrap up kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah, no. Look, at the end of the day, thank you for coming on. How do people find you?
If people find it, they can go to, if they want to see the Chinese stuff, they can search 老外看中国, or just Ben Hedges, my name, in YouTube. If they want the US, they're in the US and they want the credit stuff, it's The Credit Shifu, or just my name, Ben Hedges, and it'll come up. So yeah, those are really the main, or I'm on Instagram, The Credit Shifu. I'm on TikTok as Credit Shifu. I'm on Facebook. I'm on everything. So just search my name, normally Ben Hedges, and you'll find it. So yeah.
All right, cool. All right, we'll call it there.
Cool, man.